For the priests, the craftsmen made beautiful garments of blue, purple, and scarlet cloth, clothing to be worn while ministering in the holy place. This same cloth was used for Aaron's sacred garments, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. The ephod was made from fine linen cloth and embroidered with gold thread and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. A skilled craftsman made gold thread by beating gold into thin sheets and cutting it into fine strips. He then embroidered it into the linen with blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. They made 2 shoulder pieces for the ephod, which were attached to its corners so it could be tied down. They also made an elaborate woven sash of the same materials, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. The 2 onyx stones attached to the shoulder piece of the ephod were set in gold filigree. The stones were engraved with the names of the tribes of Israel, just as initials are engraved on a seal. These stones served as reminders to the Lord concerning the people of Israel. All this was done just as the Lord had commanded Moses. The chest piece was made in the same style as the ephod, crafted from fine linen cloth and embroidered with gold thread and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. It was doubled over to form a pouch 9 inches square. 4 rows of gemstones were set across it. In the first row were a red carnelian, a chrysolite, and an emerald. In the second row were a turquoise, a sapphire, and a white moonstone. In the third row were a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst. In the fourth row were a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. Each of these gemstones was set in gold. The stones were engraved like a seal, each with the name of one of the 12 tribes of Israel. To attach the chest piece to the ephod, they made braided cords of pure gold. They also made 2 gold rings and attached them to the top corners of the chest piece. The 2 gold cords were put through the gold rings on the chest piece, and the ends of the cords were tied to the gold settings on the shoulder piece of the ephod. 2 more gold rings were attached to the lower inside corners of the chest piece next to the ephod. Then 2 gold rings were attached to the ephod near the sash. Blue cords were used to attach the bottom rings of the chest piece to the rings of the ephod. In this way, the chest piece was held securely to the ephod above the beautiful sash. All this was done just as the Lord had commanded Moses. The robe of the ephod was woven entirely of blue yarn, with an opening for Aaron's head in the middle of it. The edge of this opening was reinforced with a woven collar, so it would not tear. Pomegranates were attached to the bottom edge of the robe. These were finely crafted of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. Bells of pure gold were placed between the pomegranates along the hem of the robe, with bells and pomegranates alternating around the hem. This robe was to be worn when Aaron ministered to the Lord, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Tunics were then made for Aaron and his sons from the fine linen cloth as well. The turbine, the headdresses, and the undercloths were all made of this fine linen. The sashes were made of fine linen cloth and embroidered with blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Finally, they made the sacred medallion of pure gold to be worn on the front of the turban, using the techniques of an engraver. They inscribed these words, "Set apart as holy to the Lord." This medallion was tied to the turban with a blue cord, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. And so at last the tabernacle was finished. The Israelites had done everything just as the Lord had commanded Moses. And they brought the entire tabernacle to Moses, the sacred tent with all its furnishings, the clasps, frames, crossbars, posts, and bases, the layers of tanned ram skins and fine goatskin leather, the inner curtain that enclosed the most holy place, the Ark of the Covenant and its carrying poles, the ark's cover, the place of atonement, the table and all its utensils, the bread of the presence, the gold lampstand and its accessories, the lamp cups and the oil lighting, the gold altar, the anointing oil, the fragrant incense, the curtain of the entrance of sacred tent, the bronze altar, the bronze grating, its poles and utensils, the large wash basin and its pedestal, the curtains for the walls of the courtyard, and the posts and bases holding them up, the curtain at the courtyard entrance, the cords and the tent pegs, all the articles used in the operation of the tabernacle, the beautifully crafted garments to be worn while ministering in the holy place, the holy garments for Aaron the priest and for his sons to wear while on duty. The people of Israel followed all the Lord's instructions that he had given to Moses. Moses inspected all their work and blessed them because it had been done as the Lord had commanded him. The Lord now said to Moses, "Set up the tabernacle on the first day of the year. Place the Ark of the Covenant inside and install the inner curtains to enclose the Ark within the most holy place. Thereafter bring the table and arrange the utensils on it and set up the lamps. Place the incense altar just outside the inner curtain, opposite the Ark of Covenant. Set up the curtain made from the entrance of the tabernacle. Place the altar of burnt offering in front of the tabernacle entrance. Set the large wash basin between the tabernacle and the altar and fill it with water. Thereafter set up the courtyard around the outside of the tent and hang the curtain for the courtyard entrance. Take the anointing oil and sprinkle it on the tabernacle and on all its furnishings to make them holy. Sprinkle the anointing oil on the altar of burnt offering and its utensils, sanctifying them. Then the altar will become most holy. Next, anoint the large wash basin and its pedestal to make them holy. Then bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tabernacle and wash them with water. Clothe Aaron with the holy garments and anoint him, setting him apart to serve me as priest. Thereafter bring his sons and dress them in their tunics. Anoint them as you did their father, so they may serve me as priests as well. With this anointing, Aaron's descendants are set apart for the priesthood forever, from generation to generation. Moses proceeded to do everything as the Lord had commanded him. So the tabernacle was set up on the first day of the new year. Moses put it together by setting its frames into their bases and attaching the crossbars and raising the posts. Then he spread the coverings over the tabernacle frame and put it on the roof laths, just as the Lord had commanded him. He placed inside the ark the stone tablets inscribed with the terms of the covenant, and then he attached the ark's carrying poles. He also set the ark's cover, the place of atonement, on top of it. He then brought the Ark of the Covenant into the tabernacle and set up the inner curtain to shield it from view, just as the Lord had commanded. Next he placed the table in the tabernacle along the north side of the holy place, just outside the inner curtain, and he arranged the bread of the presence on the table that stands before the Lord, exactly as the Lord had commanded. He set the lampstand in the tabernacle across from the table on the south side of the holy place. Then he set up the lamps in the Lord's presence, just as the Lord had commanded. He also placed the incense altar in the tabernacle in the holy place in front of the inner curtain. On it he burned the fragrant incense made from sweet spices, just as the Lord had commanded. He attached the curtain at the entrance of the tabernacle and placed the altar of burnt offering near the tabernacle entrance. On it he offered a burnt offering and a grain offering, exactly as the Lord had commanded. Next he placed the large wash basin between the tabernacle and the altar. He filled it with water so the priests could use it to wash themselves. Moses and Aaron's sons washed their hands and feet in the basin. Whenever they walked past the altar to enter the tabernacle, they were to stop and wash their hands, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. He then hung the curtains forming the courtyard around the tabernacle and the altar, and he set up the curtain at the entrance of the courtyard. So at last Moses finished the work. Then the cloud covered the tabernacle, and the glorious presence of the Lord filled it. Moses was no longer able to enter the tabernacle because the cloud had settled down over it, and the tabernacle was filled with the awesome glory of the Lord. Now whenever the cloud lifted from the tabernacle and moved, the people of Israel would set out on their journey following it. But if the cloud stayed, they would stay until it moved again. The cloud of the Lord rested on the tabernacle during the day, and at night there was fire in the cloud, so all the people of Israel could see it. This continued throughout all their journeys. I hope you enjoyed the book of Exodus. I hope you saw and noticed just how much God loved his people. Even though they hurt him and disobeyed him, he kept forgiving and giving them new chances, and he loved them and blessed them all the way. Turn your heart and your eyes to Jesus, because he will definitely open his arms to you. God bless.